All right. So before we talked a lot about police-driven data, and we know this is something really important, right? Is that police data rely on people reporting crime. So if there's nothing that's getting reported to police, and there's nothing that's coming out from that, right? If people either have like a lack of distrust in the police department, they feel like it's not a police department's business, then actually we'll go ahead and mark that down a little bit. So if you think about reasons why people may not report crime, this would be a good question. You could distrust police, right? So if you don't trust that police are good, fair people and they aren't going to do anything, you probably wouldn't call them. You may not be called the police either because you're a criminal and it would be bad business for you to actually do that. Case in point, you think about being there are people who rob drug dealers, right? So they take their drugs, they take their cash because they're always holding. And that, if you're a drug dealer who's just been robbed by someone of your drugs and dollars, you're probably not going to report that, right? You're probably just going to be all right, you got me. It's really kind of a problem, right? If you think about other reasons, right? You may not know you were a victim of crime. And so because of that, if you're unaware of I'm a victim, if you're not aware of that, you're probably not going to report it right. It could also be if you are a victim of crime, let's say domestic violence, you're fearful of retribution, so you may worry what are the consequences to that, or maybe there's something in your neighborhood that doesn't do that. You're worried about the looks that police outside your building may have, or your door may have on your self. So if you're have this distrust, if you're a criminal and may know you were a victim, fearful of retribution, you may have a lack of faith that police can do anything to handle your problem if you're a victim. So if someone stole a bag of chips from your gas station, you might be yeah, whatever, and I'm sure you could think of a bunch of reasons why, right? They can go on, and this may be something good to explore with PACBAC. But the point being is that we know that relying on data reported to police does not capture a full image, right? So, things like the UCR and NIRS, we know does not capture a full picture of data. And so, knowing this in mind, right, there's a new method to come out that tries to make this happen. Tries to make use of this information. And that's through the NCVS, the National Crime Victimization Survey. And so what this does then is that it moves the responsibility from the police to the citizen, right? So we don't ask police, so we're not asking police we ask people about their experiences with crime. And again, that's mainly the chief thing is that we know some crimes go unreported to the police for any number of reasons, right? And so why would we want to do that, right? So at the time that this is coming about, we're thinking 1970s, early 1970s or something like that. So this is when the UCR is in full swing and we create this NCVS. And so what we end up creating, right, is that when we have the NCVS, there's a lot of little details about it, right? So it samples households, not people. So it breaks the United States out into a bunch of segments, randomly selects from those segments and then selects homes within those like further segments. So it's a multi-stage kind of process, right? And well, I guess that should have been a different color. We will do this one. I'll put it around here so you know it's not supposed to be like that. Okay. So it goes around, samples households, and it keeps track of people for 3 years. So in this 3 years, right, you know, every 6 months or so, people check in, and they're like, hey, how's it going? Have you been a victim of a crime lately? If so, what's been going on? So usually what happens is that there is, you know, an in-person interview at the start. So they'll come in and they'll be like, hi, my name's Sheila, came here, you know, part of the NCVS, want to talk to you, but then follows up with telephone. So they'll call you and be like, hey, you know, this is really important. Would you please like try to, you know, ask us out, you know, whatever. Can you get this to happen? They used to have like 70, 80,000 homes, but now it's only about 35,000 agencies, or excuse me, households are in the NCVS at any given time. And so they end up asking is about victimization experiences, and they collect like a lot more information about, you know, offenders and the victims, weapons, whether something was reported to police or not, right? Which is interesting because, you know, you really can't ask police data like, hey, did you report this to police? Because obviously it was, because you're getting it like from the police, right? The police shouldn't know about it if they didn't become aware of it in some way. So when this ends up happening, right, so we have this victim off, we have these, like the weapons that are being reported. The NCVS is also concerned with tracking why. So why is this the case? What kind of information, why or why not did you do that? As well as like who is a victim, and also how number of times victimized. So how many times you've been victimized, right? And so this becomes really useful, you know, in the like about this. So they ask about 7 crimes, 7 of the UCR crimes. The one that they leave out is murder, because you can't really ask dead people, hey, were you a victim of a crime? Which is, you know, kind of interesting, right? So we ask about these 7 different crimes. Fun fact, murder is believed to be one of the most reported crimes because, like, if you see it, you tell a dead body. So is motor vehicle theft because of insurance reasons. Sexual assault tends to be low reporting, as well as larceny, but that's just a fun fact. So we have like these 7 crimes are being kept track of, and you know we keep following behind it. And so the part that like we have some interesting findings that come from this is that there are typically more crimes occurring than reported. You know, this is like one example. I used to drive a pickup truck, and I had tools in the back of it, and I remember one day finding out someone stole the tools in my truck. I didn't report it because I didn't know when it happened or where, who it possibly could have been. It happened, but I didn't report it, right? And so this gets at one of the important things about the NCVS then is that this helps uncover the dark figure of crime. So by that meaning, like, there's a lot more crime occurs, but we don't know what that amount is. The NCVS, by asking victims, doesn't rely on police to actually do that, to get ahead, right? Now, of course, there may be some, you know, aspects that do end up getting reported, or crimes that occur that no one's a witness to, right? So we can't get into those, right? But it helps uncover it. It's also useful because, unlike, we'll go back to our teal, or was this turquoise perhaps? I don't know. More crimes occurring than reported, and it's nice that the NCVS is modular. So they always ask like their core questions, but, you know, let's say someone was interested in like adding some more information, so you could add in questions. about identity theft. Or also like school bullying was another big topic that's coming up. That also comes up, right? So it has this flexibility and charm on it that really not a lot of studies can do. Now, something to keep in mind, right, is that because we sample households and we're sampling people within those households, because of that, we don't know local trends. We can't get a very good estimate. We don't know what's happening within, like, like if you lived in Colton, what's happening in Colton, right? So we don't know local crime issues. It also comes out annually, so we also can't get like day to day within trends and something like that. NIBRS gives you the time of date for a crime, so you can kind of maybe track some of that if you wanted to, as well as like weapon patterns and stuff like that. You can't really do that with the NCVS. And also, again, because we're asking people, you are asking people about their victimization. So you have the situation where like, hey, tell us about that violent crime that you were a victim of, right? So you can imagine, right, like asking someone, hey, were you robbed or raped or something like that? So people, because it has this direct component, so people may lie or withhold information because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want like the shame attached to them. And so there's a risk of undercounting because of that. So, I tell you this mainly just to be knowing that this is kind of out there and that the NCVS can give us a lot of information about victimization experiences, their beliefs of the criminal justice system, why something may or may not work, and the like. But it's not like a complete cure-all to UCR. Again, this goes back to we have, imperfect information, and while it may be useful, it doesn't necessarily give a clear idea of what to do. But it's very powerful in its ability to estimate national trends, to see what things are happening, who is being victimized by who, how many times, weapons that were used at all, estimated value, why someone may or may not contact the police, and things like that. So there's a lot of use that comes from the NCVS that you cannot get from NIBRS or from the UCR. So it makes it a really powerful data collection tool. But for our purposes, we'll kind of table a discussion